At exactly midnight on my 42nd birthday, someone knocked 3 times on my apartment door. I was sitting alone in the dark, staring at a small birthday cake I had bought for myself, when I heard a woman's voice from the hallway say my name. I froze. I knew that voice. It belonged to the one person I never expected to see again, my ex-wife's mother. When I opened the door, she stood there holding an old wooden box against her chest, tears running silently down her face. She looked at me and whispered, "Your present is something my daughter should have given you herself." Before I tell you what was inside that box, if stories about second chances, forgiveness, and unexpected kindness touch your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Sometimes, one small act of kindness can change a person's entire life. My name is Daniel, and for the first time in years, I had decided not to pretend that my birthday mattered. My apartment was quiet, almost painfully quiet. There were no balloons, no candles, no friends laughing in the kitchen. Just the ticking of the wall clock and the faint sound of traffic far below my window. I had stopped celebrating birthdays after my divorce because birthdays reminded me of everything I had lost. 3 years earlier, I had been married to Emily. We had been together for almost 11 years. We had shared a tiny apartment, terrible furniture, cheap vacations, late-night conversations, and dreams about growing old together. But slowly, something between us broke. We stopped talking. Small disagreements became bitter arguments. Work consumed my time, and Emily began feeling invisible. I thought providing for our future was enough. She needed my presence, but I kept giving her promises that tomorrow would be different. Then one rainy evening, she packed a suitcase. There was no dramatic betrayal, no shocking secret, and no single moment that could explain everything. She simply looked exhausted. She told me she loved me but no longer knew how to live beside someone who made her feel alone. Her mother, Margaret, supported her decision. I couldn't blame her. Margaret had always been protective of Emily, and during the divorce, she made it clear that she believed I had failed her daughter. The divorce became official 6 months later. Emily moved to another city, and I stayed behind in the apartment we had once shared. I removed her photographs from the walls but couldn't bring myself to throw them away. For months, I woke up reaching toward the empty side of the bed. Sometimes I still bought 2 coffees before remembering there was nobody waiting at home. Eventually, life became a routine. Work. Groceries. Laundry. Sleep. Repeat. On my birthday that year, I received only 2 messages. One was from my bank reminding me about a payment. The other was from my younger brother, who lived overseas and apologized because he couldn't call. I told him I was fine. I wasn't. So on my 42nd birthday, I bought a small chocolate cake, placed 1 candle in the center, and sat in the dark. I didn't even turn on the lights. I told myself I preferred the quiet. Then came the knock. When I opened the door and saw Margaret standing there, my heart seemed to stop. She looked older than I remembered. Her hair had turned almost completely silver, and she was wearing the same blue coat I remembered from Emily's childhood photographs. In her trembling hands was a wooden box covered with scratches. I stepped aside and let her in. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she placed the box on my kitchen table. "I almost didn't come," she said softly. "But Emily asked me to." My entire body went cold. "Emily?" Margaret sat down, wiped her eyes, and explained that 6 months earlier, Emily had been diagnosed with a serious illness. Treatment had changed her life, and during those difficult months, she had spent a great deal of time thinking about the past. She had written letters to people she had loved, including me. I couldn't breathe. Margaret told me Emily had wanted to come herself, but circumstances had made it impossible. She had asked her mother to wait until my birthday and give me the box at midnight. I stared at it. "What is inside?" I asked. Margaret shook her head. Open it. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside was a collection of photographs, old movie tickets, a dried flower, a silver keychain, and dozens of handwritten pages tied together with a faded ribbon. On top was a photograph of Emily and me from our first year together. We were standing beside a lake, soaked by rain, laughing like two people who believed nothing could ever separate them. Underneath it was a letter. I unfolded it carefully. Emily had written that she remembered our marriage differently now. Not as a perfect love story, but as something real, something beautiful that had become damaged because two people stopped understanding each other's pain. She admitted she had blamed me for everything because anger was easier than accepting that she had also made mistakes. Then she wrote something that shattered me. She said she never stopped loving the man I had been before life became complicated. She remembered how I used to make pancakes on Sunday mornings, how I would call her during lunch just to hear her voice, and how I once drove 3 hours through a snowstorm because she had forgotten her favorite scarf at a hotel. I had forgotten those things. She hadn't. Another letter explained why she had asked Margaret to visit me. Emily had started a small savings account years earlier. She had secretly put money into it whenever she could. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to help someone begin again. She wanted me to use it for something that would make me happy. At the bottom of the box was a bank envelope and a final note. Daniel, please don't spend your life punishing yourself for the person you were. Learn from him, forgive him, and become someone you can love. I couldn't hold back the tears. Margaret reached across the table and took my hand. Then she told me the rest. Emily hadn't asked her to bring me the box because she wanted me to feel guilty. She wanted me to understand that forgiveness wasn't about returning to the past. It was about finally being free from it. I asked Margaret if Emily was okay. She looked down. She is fighting, she said. Every single day. That night, I couldn't sleep. For the first time in years, I opened every old photograph I had hidden away. I laughed at some. I cried at others. And when morning came, I realized something had changed inside me. I wasn't waiting for Emily to return. I was simply grateful that our story had not ended with anger. Weeks later, I used part of the money Emily had left to open a small community kitchen in our neighborhood. I named it Second Chances. Every Saturday, anyone who needed a warm meal could come without questions or judgment. Margaret became one of our volunteers. Months passed, and the kitchen grew. One winter morning, I received a letter from Emily. She had survived her treatment. The first thing she wrote was, "I heard you finally learned how to cook." I laughed so hard I cried. She said she wasn't asking to rebuild our marriage. She only wanted to know if, someday, we could sit across from each other and talk without remembering the reasons we had once walked away. I wrote back immediately. Yes. Not because I expected another chance at marriage. Because sometimes love doesn't return to repair the old life. Sometimes it returns simply to remind you that the old life was worth being grateful for. And that birthday, which had begun with a lonely man sitting beside a tiny cake in the dark, became the birthday I would never forget. Because at midnight, my ex-wife's mother hadn't brought me a box. She had brought me forgiveness. She had brought me hope. And most importantly, she had brought me the courage to begin again. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who may need a second chance, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Your support helps stories like this reach people who may be quietly struggling and reminding them that their story isn't over. And before the story ends, I want you to do something special. Comment, "I believe in second chances," if you believe that forgiveness can change a life. Because sometimes the greatest gift we receive isn't something wrapped in paper. Sometimes, it's the chance to finally forgive ourselves and open the door to tomorrow.